Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another exciting and awesome video on this YouTube channel here. That is correct. We are on youtube.com. I hope you're having a fantastic morning. Today's video, what I'd like to do is to answer another very quick user request that I got on twitter.com, the place you go to for all positivity. But what this student wanted me to build out is the phone application, and the most important part that he wanted to actually figure out is how exactly do we lay out all of these components for the iPhone X, kind of like this, and also for the iPhone 5S. As you may already know, the iPhone 5S, the pixel ratio is a lot smaller compared to the iPhone 10. I don't know exactly what the width of this device is, but it's certainly a lot smaller right here from the left side all the way to the right here. And so the way I'm going to teach you how to build this is to use something called a UI collection view. And in order to calculate the sizes correctly, we are not going to use any hard-coded values, but instead we're going to use a percentage instead. So for example, the spacing over here, here, and also over here is a percentage of the width of the entire device. And based on that width, we're going to calculate the sizes of all of these keys right here. And so what you can see is as you tap on any of these keys, you'll see the number appear right there. Hitting the backspace will remove it. I don't know, do I really need to explain how the phone application works? Maybe I do. But clicking on this also does that, and that. Maybe we will spell out something interesting here. So 8008 and S. So interesting word there. But anyhow, let's kind of dive into Xcode, and I'll show you exactly how to build this out right now. Alrighty, everybody, before we get into the meat of today's lesson, I would like to just announce that we have a brand new course available on letsbuildthatApp.com. And inside of this course, we are going to learn how to build out all of the nice features that belong to the AppStore application, which looks like this, and this on the right side, right over here. Now, quickly, I would like to just highlight some of the nice features that we'll be learning how to build out. For example, we have the today's screen right over here. It looks kind of like this. We can click onto any of these elements to launch it full screen like so. Scrolling this guy up and down, you'll see a nice blurry panel appear right at the bottom there. Dragging this up and down will dismiss it like so. If you want to dismiss this page, you can do it by dragging or clicking on this X button over here. So let me show you that one more time by clicking somewhere down below. Drag this guy down and then let go of the mouse, and it'll dismiss it to exactly where it came from. So a pretty awesome feature there. If you click into the apps page, which kind of looks like this, we are going to load up all this data using a lot of different various JSON APIs. So here's an API here, and also down below. Clicking into any of these apps will launch the detail screen, which looks like this. So you see the app icon here. We have a preview that you can swipe left. You see this nice snapping effect right over here. Makes sure all of your cells align to the left side like so. Pretty good stuff, and you can see the same effect right over here. So clicking into Netflix will show all of the app detailed information as well as the images, just like that. All right, the third tab, we have the search page right here, which allows you to search through the App Store using the iTunes Search API. So for example, if we search for Twitter right here, it's going to launch the data inside of your collection view, which kind of looks like this. We are loading a lot of the images using SD Web Image. So I show you exactly how to install that pod. And finally, on the right side, we are loading this entire page, which allows you to paginate through the iTunes API. So every time you scroll down to the very bottom, you are going to load more. And this is a very good technique to make sure your network calls are very fast and performant, and to make sure you're not loading too much data on your user's cell phone. All right, so if you're interested in checking out this course, make sure to check it out by using the link in the description below. All right, having said that, let's get started with the lesson right now. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to the awesome coding session for today's video. As you can see on the left side of the screen right over here, we have a brand new single view application loaded up. We can run this project in any of these simulators that you would like, but I'm going to go ahead and use the iPhone XS Max, which is this guy right here. You can see every time you run this, you have your white screen, which is a pretty good sign. We're ready to start coding inside of our view controller here. So for example, you can set the background color to something like yellow, whatever color you want, you can just run your application again and you'll see a nice yellow color inside of your view controller now. So pretty awesome stuff. I'm going to try to finish this video within the next 30 minutes and show you everything inside of this app here. Not exactly sure if I can do it, but I'm going to try my best. All right, so having said all that, let me go ahead and create a collection view controller that's going to render out all of these buttons here, 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 and also this header up here. So the easiest way of doing this is to make sure you have a collection view controller. And the way you're going to want to do this is to create a new file or just change the superclass here to UI collection view controller. Every time you modify this, you want to make sure to run it and not get any crashes inside of your simulator here. And as you can see, I've pretty much ran this before, and you can see the crash all the way up at the very top. It says that you can't instantiate your controller from some kind of main, and you also need some kind of layout file. So the way to fix this problem is to go inside of your app delegate. We're going to create this programmatically, and I'll show you the magic line of code, which is to set the window root view controller equals to your view controller class. And you can see if you try to run this again, it'll still crash because this is now a collection view controller. So you're going to need a flow layout. So it tells you about this layout thing right here, a layout parameter. And you just have to type this guy out manually because Xcode is kind of buggy. So just type in collection view layout. And on the right side, you want to provide this parameter here. So UI collection view flow layout. Just create it like so and create it using this layout here. I know a lot of you guys are going to probably run into a problem here. Make sure to use a flow layout. So flow layout is the one that you want, not this guy. If you use this, it's still going to crash. So let me just show you this because I guarantee you at least 10 people in the comments are going to talk about this problem here. So let's just use a flow layout instead. And once you have your flow layout, you can go back to your view controller and you can set your collection view's background color to yellow instead. So collection view background color, and you'll now get this yellow color here. So hopefully that'll show up. And here we go. We have our collection view coming from our view controller file right here. And the next thing we are kind of set up to do now is to lay out some of these cells inside of our collection view so that they appear around and maybe have some text inside the middle here. So you see 2 and ABC, right? The way you have to do this is to register a cell inside of your lovely collection view. So, just type in register class, and this is all done programmatically, and you'll find that it's actually very, very easy. The class here is going to come from some kind of class. You can create it right above if you want to do everything in one file. Maybe I'll just do this for now. So I'll call this a key cell. So each one of these I'll call a key. And for this guy, I'll use a collection view cell. So this guy, we are going to override super init frame because every time we want to start drawing things inside of our cell, we have to overwrite this guy here. Just provide the frame right here, click on this guy, make sure to fix it with the required like so. All right, so this key cell, I'm just going to make it be a background color of red. So just set it to this bad boy right here, .red, and now we're good to go. We have a custom cell. Let me create it as a registration cell here. So collection view, register our key cell, use the .self just to get the class out of the cell here. And for the reuse identifier, just use some kind of cell ID. Let me create this right above here as a file private, let cell ID equals all of that lovely stuff here. Okay, so a lot of boilerplate code, but this is what you got to do. Number of items in section, let's return the value of, let's just use a value of 7 for now. And finally, we are going to use cell for item at index path. And here is where you have to return some kind of cell object, right? You have this method, requires a cell, and let me dequeue my cell from my collection view. Let cell equals collection view dequeue. We are going to use the string identifier up here, and just paste that in here. Use the index path coming from the parameter there. And this guy, it's a key cell because you registered your key cell under this cell ID and you're dequeuing using that cell ID here. That's kind of why you can do this correctly, just like that. And finally, we are going to return our cell. I think if you run your code now, you're gonna see about 7 cells that are 50 by 50 in terms of width and height. And we also have this yellow background, which isn't all that great. So I prefer to have a white background. You know, not that anything's wrong with yellow or not that anything's better about white, but that's the color we're going to use for now. And here we go. We have our 7 cells inside of our collection view now. The way to actually make your cells a lot larger like this is to conform to another protocol that will tell your cells how big and how tall they need to be. And this protocol is called the collection view delegate flow layout. You can read the documentation, but basically when you have this underneath your, let's say, view controller as a protocol, you can now say things like size for item at and just return some kind of size. So let me just say init width and height. You can see it tells you to return some kind of size here. So, you know, if you pop in some kind of value of 80 and 80, these are what you would call hard-coded values. And this is what we're going to try to avoid in today's lesson. So 8080 looks kind of like that. And what you can also do is to provide some insets on the left and right edges. So let me kind of show you what I mean. You can say inset, so inset section at right here. Every one of these collection view items here are inside of an entire section. So this is the first section here. And this guy, you just want to say return and you'll say init. Top, left, bottom, and right because it's an edge inset. This guy, you can use something like 16, 16, 16, and just provide the values of 16, and it'll give the edge on the left side some spacing, obviously. And based on how tall and how wide your cells are, the cells might not be able to fit on one line. Whenever the next cell is not able to fit, it's going to flow into the next slot, which is this guy here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's kind of why we use a flow layout to allow your cells to flow naturally from left to right. Okay, so a lot of boilerplate code here, but this is pretty much what we need to lay out our cells inside of the iPhone XS Max. And the next thing I would like to kind of show you is what this looks like inside of the iPhone 5S. Let me go ahead and modify that and run it inside of this simulator here. We are now going to see how the cells are laid out whenever the screen size is a lot thinner, right? As you can see inside of the iPhone 5S, we only have enough space to lay out 3 elements from the left to the right. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 right here. On the iPhone XS Max, we have a lot more space. So that's kind of why we see 4 items like that. And this is essentially the problem that we would like to avoid. Instead of using the hard-coded value of 80 right here, we should be using some kind of percentage value instead, or at least some kind of calculation based on a percentage. Let me show you what I mean by going back into the code here. And here we go. I am going to go back into the inset for section at. So every time you modify this value here, the left, you can modify this to be whatever you want, right? So let me go ahead and bump this guy up to 120. And I'll use the iPhone XS Max just so that you can see what's going on. Basically, the left side is going to be a lot larger with the value of 120. And so what I'll do is, in order to lay out my cells so that they are 1, 2, 3 instead of one row, I'm going to calculate the left padding here, the right padding here, and also these middle values, the little spacing in between each of these cells. I'm going to calculate all of this stuff based on the percentage of the width. Now, this is going to involve a little bit of math here. So some basic math and I guess geometry is what it is. So don't be too concerned if you don't understand what's going on. You just have to run through the calculations maybe once or twice in your head and it should be fine. So let me kind of do this right here. I'm going to say left, right padding, and I'm going to set this value equal to something based on the view frame dot width. And I'm going to use a value of 0.15. So this means that the left padding here is about 15% of the entire width. The same goes for the right padding here. So that's my first calculation that I'm going to use. The next calculation is called the interspacing or inter-item spacing. Let me just call this interspacing because that's easier to say. I'm going to make sure that this space right here and here is also based on the view frame width. And let's say view frame dot width, and because it's a little bit smaller, I'm going to use a value of 10%. So 0.1 is about 10%. Make sure to modify these to be whatever the UI design that you need, but basically this is how the math is going to look like. And then finally, what I need to calculate is the cell width, something like this. So cell width equals something. And actually, I don't need to calculate that in here, but I'm going to use the left-right padding for the left right here, and the right is over here. Okay, so that's pretty good. Let me run the application again. And what you'll see is the left padding is going to look like that. The right padding looks like that over here. And the next thing I need to do is for the width and the height here, I want to use this calculation to actually calculate the width. So it's going to be a lot clearer once you see what's going on. Let me kind of comment that out, or maybe I will copy this over here. I'm going to paste that up here instead of size for item at. All right, so we have the calculation of the left and right side padding here, and also the inner item spacing here, right? So we have this, and also this. So I'm going to add all that up and then subtract it from the entire view's width, and then finally divide that value by 3. That way I can get the spacing for this cell here, here, and here. Hopefully the math is going to make a little more sense once you see it. So I'm going to say cell width equals, let's see, view.frame.width right here. We are going to subtract, let's see, 2 times left right padding because we have the left and the right, right? And then we are going to subtract, I guess, 2 times the inner spacing as well, so inner spacing. And then finally divide this entire value by 3. That way we have the cell width and the cell height, just like so. And I'll run this again, and you'll see what this looks like inside of the iPhone XS Max right here. So that's kind of what our cells look like. The padding values might be a little large, so let's bump this down to, let's say, 0.13 maybe. And I'll run this again, and now I'll swap this out with the iPhone 5S. So iPhone 5S is right here. Cells look a little bit better. I'll run this again, and we will see what it looks like. So let me open this guy one more time. And on the 5S right here, you see that the cells, in terms of the proportion of the width and height of these red guys, they should be exactly the same proportion as you're seeing on the iPhone XS Max here. And basically, this is how you determine the width and the height of your cells according to the device that you're on. If you change this to the iPhone X right here, which is even smaller than the iPhone XS Max, you'll see the same proportions. So I'll run this inside of this simulator here. You'll see that the cells look exactly the same. So that's kind of what the UI I'm trying to go for looks like right here using these calculations. And that's pretty much the trick to this entire process. So let me show you that one more time. Looks kind of like that. Okay, so everything with our application here is looking pretty good. If you have any questions or comments about the math and the calculation here, make sure to let me know in the comment section below. Last thing I would like to do to wrap up this entire lesson is to kind of fill out the UI correctly. So let me go back to the iPhone X simulator here. And you see all of the keys right here have some kind of number. It has a corner radius and also some kind of ABC lettering below the digit inside of these keys here. So 2 has ABC, DEF, GHI, and so on and so forth. Let me show you how I want to do this by modifying our cell here. So here is our key cell in the red right here. Instead of using the red, why don't we use a UI color value? Let's create a white 0.9. I guess that's going to work with a alpha value of 1. Let me run that in the simulator here. So this is the iPhone X. That's going to appear here. This is the problem with too many simulators, but it should be okay. Let me just go ahead and run this in the iPhone XS Max. These keys look a little bit light, so I guess that's okay for now. So I'll switch that back to the left side simulator here. Run this guy one more time. Keys look okay. Next thing I'd like to do is to provide some kind of corner radius for this cell here, right? So I believe you can do that somewhere inside of the cell directly. So layout subviews, super layout subviews. Whenever the subviews are laid out, you are kind of aware of how tall the cell is itself. So you can actually say layer.corner radius equals self.frame.width and divided by 2. Just either use the width or the height. Doesn't really matter because In our case, the width and the height are the same value. But once you have your application running, you'll see that your cells are now perfectly round, just like that. Next thing I would like to do is to maybe move this into its own file, because you don't exactly want your view controllers to be super overloaded with too much code. So it's always a good idea to just put this in a separate file. So it's file, call this guy the same file name as your class itself, import UIKit, and paste all that code here. So, you can run this inside of the simulator again. You'll see your cell in the gray with the corner radius that's perfectly round. And it kind of looks like that. Last thing you might want to do is to put in some kind of label. So let me draw out these 1, 2, 3 labels using a digits label. We are going to create some kind of label here. It doesn't matter how you do it, but let's also create a letters label. And let's just create a label here. I'm going to use this bit of code inside the init to customize the label. So digits label.text equals, let's use a value of 8 for now. And let's say letters label equals the A, B, and C. I believe these digit font or digits label.font is a lot larger. So let's use a UI font system font of size. I think I'm using a value of 32 or something very, very large. All right, so we are going to try to fix this down below with a dot text like that. Let's see, letters label dot font equals UI font, and let me use bold system font for the label on the bottom, and this will be the value of, I guess I'll try 10 for now. That looks pretty decent. The way I'm going to lay out these labels inside of these cells here is to use a vertical stack view. So let stack view equals UI stack view. Let's create this guy. This bad boy will be the digits label and the letters label, just like that. Okay, stack views are defaulted to be laid out horizontally, so we have to fix this to be dot vertical. Finally, we are going to add this stack view. And next, we are going to use stack view dot fill super view. This method comes from the UI view layout extension here, which I imported before I created the video. If you want to see how this is actually derived, make sure to watch that lesson here. You should be okay. But anyhow, as you can see, when we use the fill super view, the stack view is laying everything out to the left side here and also filling up the entire space for our cell. Instead of using fill super view, you can simply use center in super view, and that's another method inside of that extension class here. But basically, it allows your elements to be kind of centered in the middle here. Last thing you probably want to do is to center the text. So, digits label dot text alignment equals center like that. And you probably want to do the same thing for the letters label as well. We are going to run this one final time. The text inside of the cells should look a lot nicer and a lot closer to the design here. So 8 ABC is every cell that you see inside of your collection view. Last thing you probably want to do is for the spacing between each of your numbered key cells here, you might want to provide this spacing right here between these cells with a larger value. So that method to actually customize that section is called minimum line spacing for section at. And let's use a value of, I believe I want something like, let's say the value of 16. I don't know exactly what the value is over here, but 16 seems to be okay. I'm running this on an iPhone or on the iPhone XS Max simulator on my Hackintosh right here. So everything appears to be really, really quick, in terms of compiling and running. And this looks a lot better, I guess. The next thing you want to do is to maybe instead of seeing 888, you might want to start seeing these values here, right? So for example, you can create some kind of array. So I want to create some kind of, numbers equals some kind of array here. Let's say 1, and just do this until you are done with all of these numbers. So 4, 5, let's see, 6. This is a little tedious, but this is what you got to do. And 9, and then finally we have the star, and then we have the 0, and then we have the pound at the very bottom. So I'm just going from left to right all the way down to the last number here. I have to render these guys out a little bit differently on the bottom, so I'll take care of that in just one moment. Let me now go ahead and use numbers as my, let's say, number of items in section. I want to use numbers.count. And then finally, for the cell here, if you run your application now, you'll get a lot more cells to appear inside of your collection view because you now have a lot more items here. So that looks pretty good. For the cell for row at, let me customize these digits in here. So cell has those two labels called digits label and letters label. So let's obviously modify this one first. This guy is going to come from the numbers array, and we use index path dot item just like that. Hopefully this works. The syntax highlighting is coming back, so that looks good. And that should be good to go. We are going to run this inside of the simulator now. You'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. Star, 0, and pound on the right side here. Next thing you might want to do is to provide, another array for all these labels. So, you have blank right here, A, B, C, D, E, F. One way to do this quickly is to maybe say lettering and let this equal a array as well. So this is kind of a hack solution. You might want to provide some kind of struct that encapsulates the numbers and lettering, but we'll just do this for now because this is a video lesson overall, or after all. So let's say ABC, and let's just type this out really quickly. Feel free to skip this part of the video if you don't want to see me type this out completely. JKL, MNO, and let's see, PQ, QRS, let's see, T, so T, U, and V. Can't believe we have to type out all these letters here, X, Y, and Z. Finally, we have nothing for the star, we have the plus for the 0, and we have an empty one for the pound here. So I'm basically just typing out all these letters down below. Finally, for the cell for item at, we can do the same thing for the other label, so letter label. Dot text equals lettering, and we are going to say index path dot item. Hopefully we don't get any crashes. I think I typed out everything correctly. So these numbers right here, so numbers and the lettering, they should have the same amount of items inside of the array. Otherwise you might experience a crash. But as you can see, everything looks okay. We have the 2 here, the 3, and so on and so forth. And that's basically how you line up all of your elements inside of your simulator using a collection view. Let me try to use the iPhone 5S one more time just to make sure everything is rendering out correctly. And then maybe I'll wrap up the episode right here. As you can see, the cells look okay, but the items inside of your cell are appearing very, very large. So how do you fix this issue here is the question you have to really answer, right? Well, one way to find a solution is to go on Stack Overflow, which is kind of what I did. So let me just drag that out of the way. I'm going to go back into my key cell here, and you see we are determining what the font of these cells are using this line. So digits label dot font is the 32 here. And instead of using a 32, we can use a much smaller value like 24, right? But if you run this inside of the XS Max again, these numbers will appear a lot smaller. So you need some way to determine which device you're on. And what I'll do is I'm going to grab some code from another project, which I found on Stack Overflow. Let me just copy this code and put it somewhere inside of this project. This is going to be an extension on UI device. Helps you determine if you are an iPhone 4S, 5, 6X, or XR, XS Max. So I'm going to use this extension here very, very simply by going back up to digits label.font. And I'm going to use a ternary operator on UI device.current. And we are going to use the screen type here. So screen type, if this is equal to the iPhone 5, 5S, 5C, and SE, we're going to use the font of 24. Otherwise, we'll just use the system font of 32 like that. You don't really need the font right here, so you can remove that if you want. And finally, I'm going to run this in the iPhone 5S right now. It's going to look just the same as it did before. And let's kind of see what it looks like. So that looks okay. The font's appearing a lot smaller. Maybe it's still rather large, but that's kind of okay. We can move on to the iPhone XS Max now. And basically it's going to use the font of 32 because we are no longer in the iPhone 5S screen type right here. So you can see UI device, current screen type. Screen type actually comes from the extension, which is this enumeration right here. So screen type, that's kind of how you're able to check using this call right here, equal dot iPhone 5S. So this looks okay. If you want to do the same calculation for the letters label, so for example, these letters might be appearing very, very large. What you can do is you can apply the same type of calculation here. So let's see, for the letter label, the font, maybe I'll just do it one more time. We're going to say UI device dot current dot screen type equals, if this is the iPhone 5S, we are going to use a UI font. Let's see, dot bold system font. Is this going to come up? Looks good. And let's use a value of 8. Otherwise, we can use a value of bold system font. Hopefully this will come out. Nope, not looking like it will. So right here, of size, and we use a value of 10 like we had before. So I'll try to run this again. You'll see that the font for the iPhone XS Max is going to look okay. It looks like that. For the iPhone 5S, which is what I'll show you right now, the font is going to shrink by I guess a pixel count of 2, and that looks a lot nicer right there. Alrighty everybody, hopefully you enjoyed today's lesson on how to create the number pad application. If you have any questions or comments, make sure to let me know down below. If you want to download the source code for today's video, you can find the link in the description below. If you want to check out more courses on how to program iOS applications using the Swift programming language, make sure to check out the courses in the description as well. That's going to be it for today. I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.